Listen closely, because what your legs are telling you right now might be the most important warning your body has ever whispered. Somewhere in America tonight, a man in his 60s will lie awake, rubbing a strange cramp out of his calf, dismissing it as nothing more than an old man's ache. He will not know that this cramp is a messenger. He will not know that his legs are trying to warn him about a silent, creeping failure happening deep inside the vascular highway that keeps him alive. And by the time the warning becomes impossible to ignore, the cost of listening too late can be a limb, a hospital bed, or worse. This is not fear for the sake of fear. This is the truth that generations before us understood instinctively, but that our modern, sedentary world has taught us to ignore. Our grandparents, the farmers and the laborers, and the women who walked miles for water, knew the language of the body. They knew that pain in the legs was not just getting older. It was information. And tonight, we are going to teach you to read that information again. But the reality is, most people over 50 have been taught to shrug off leg pain as an inevitable cost of aging. On the contrary, leg pain is very often the earliest, most honest messenger your circulatory system has. Your legs sit at the very end of a river of blood that begins at your heart and travels through thousands of miles of vessels, growing narrower and narrower until it reaches the small, delicate capillaries in your feet. When that river begins to silt up, when the banks begin to narrow, the first place you feel it is not your heart, it is your legs. Modern medicine has a clinical name for this slow narrowing: peripheral artery disease. It happens when fatty deposits, plaque, begin lining the walls of the arteries that feed your legs. The same way rust and mineral buildup can slowly choke a garden hose until only a thin trickle gets through. And yet, modern solutions often treat this like a plumbing problem to be patched with a pill, when what previous generations understood, through movement, through whole foods, through the wisdom of keeping the blood moving, was something deeper. Furthermore, standard medications can manage symptoms, but they were never designed to restore the vitality of that entire circulatory landscape the way daily movement and nourishment can. Just imagine your circulatory system as an old, sprawling network of rivers and streams, feeding every field of a great estate. When the water flows freely, the fields are green, the crops are strong, the whole land is alive. But when the streams begin to choke, section by section, the fields at the farthest edges wither first. Your legs are the farthest edges of your estate, and tonight, we're going to walk through 7 strange sensations your legs may be sending you, so that you can catch the trouble at the field's edge, long before it reaches the heart of the land. Here is where we begin your first piece of practical wisdom, one that costs you nothing and takes only minutes. Every morning, before you even rise from bed, lie flat, lift both legs into the air, and gently flex your ankles back and forth for 60 seconds, as if you were pressing on invisible pedals. This simple motion, done before gravity pulls blood downward for the day, encourages your leg veins to prime themselves, pushing stagnant blood back toward the heart before you've even taken your first step. It is a small ritual, but it is one that cardiac rehabilitation programs have long used with patients recovering from vascular strain, precisely because movement of the calf muscles acts as a secondary pump for blood returning to the heart. Do this daily, and you are already doing more for your circulation than most people do in a week. Hello, and welcome to Timeless Vitality Secrets. If you value this kind of ancestral health wisdom, paired with real physiological understanding, consider subscribing to join our family here. And we would love to hear from you in the comments. How old are you? And what is the hardest physical job you've ever done in your life? Tell us, because the bodies that built this country were bodies that worked, and there is wisdom in that generation we are determined to preserve. Now, let us walk together through the first of these 7 strange leg pains. Because listen closely, this one is often the most overlooked of them all. The first is a deep, aching cramp that appears in your calf, specifically when you walk a certain distance, and then, strangely, disappears completely when you stop and rest. Doctors call this intermittent claudication, but let's set aside the clinical coldness of that term and understand what your body is actually experiencing. When you walk, your leg muscles demand more oxygen-rich blood. If the arteries feeding those muscles are narrowed by plaque, they simply cannot deliver enough blood fast enough. Your muscle begins crying out, quite literally starved of oxygen. The same ache you'd feel in your arm if you squeezed a stress ball hundreds of times without rest. Why does this happen only during walking? because at rest, even a narrowed artery can usually keep up with your leg's low demand. It's only under the load of movement that the shortage reveals itself. This single symptom, pain on walking that resolves with rest, is one of the clearest, most well-documented signals of peripheral artery disease. And it deserves a conversation with your doctor, not a shrug. The second strange sensation is a cold foot. One foot noticeably colder than the other, even in a warm room. Do you know what that means for your circulation? It means one leg's rivers are flowing more freely than the others. Blood carries warmth from your body's core all the way out to your extremities. When one leg receives measurably less blood flow than its twin, it simply cannot hold on to heat the way it should. Previous generations, working outdoors in harsh winters, would have noticed this immediately. A numb, cold foot inside the same boot as a warm one. Today, wrapped in centrally heated homes, this asymmetry can hide in plain sight for years. The third is a shiny, hairless patch of skin, low on the shin or the top of the foot. This is where it gets interesting, because skin and hair follicles are remarkably honest tissues. They require a robust, constant supply of nutrients and oxygen to keep growing and to keep producing natural oils. When circulation to that patch of skin quietly diminishes over months and years, hair growth slows and eventually stops, and the skin itself can take on an almost polished, tight appearance because it is being undernourished at the cellular level. Boston University School of Medicine's vascular research has long noted this trophic skin change as one of the visible, external signs clinicians look for when peripheral circulation is compromised. The fourth is wounds or sores on the feet or lower legs that heal slowly, or that seem to simply refuse to heal at all. Pay attention here, because this is your body's clearest cry for help. Healing is an enormously metabolic process. It requires immune cells to travel to the wound site, oxygen to fuel tissue repair, and nutrients to rebuild what was damaged. All of that arrives by blood. A wound that lingers for weeks, that seems to scab and reopen, that never quite closes, is very often telling you that not enough blood is arriving to complete the job. The fifth is a burning or tingling sensation in the feet, particularly at night when you finally lie still. How is that even possible, you might ask, when nothing seems to be touching your skin? This sensation often comes from the nerves themselves being undernourished, a condition related to, but distinct from, artery narrowing, sometimes called peripheral neuropathy. And worse still, poor circulation and nerve starvation frequently travel together, each one worsening the other, because nerves are some of the most metabolically hungry tissues in your entire body, requiring a rich, constant blood supply to function and repair themselves. The sixth is muscle weakness in the legs that seems disproportionate to how much you've actually been using them. A sense that your legs simply do not have the strength they once had, even on days you haven't overexerted yourself. This ties directly into what physiologists call anabolic resistance, the aging body's frustrating tendency to struggle at rebuilding muscle tissue, even when nutrition is adequate. And when circulation is also compromised, the muscle is being asked to rebuild itself with an even smaller ration of the building blocks it needs. It is, quite literally, being starved and shortchanged at the same time. And the seventh, often the most alarming when people finally notice it, is visibly swollen ankles by the end of the day that mostly resolve by morning. Are you ready to see how this connects? This particular symptom often points not to narrowed arteries, but to their overworked partners, the veins, whose one-way valves are responsible for pushing blood back up against gravity toward your heart. When those valves weaken, a condition called venous insufficiency, blood and fluid pool in the lower legs throughout the day, only to slowly redistribute while you sleep. It is a different mechanical failure than artery narrowing, but it lives in the very same neighborhood, the aging circulatory network of your legs. Now here is the midpoint truth that we promised you, the one that flips everything you thought you understood. Most people believe that leg circulation problems are caused primarily by what you eat, cholesterol, fatty foods, and little else. However, decades of research from institutions studying vascular aging have revealed something far more uncomfortable. Prolonged stillness, simply sitting for hours without moving your calf muscles, may be one of the single most damaging habits for circulation, often rivaling diet in its impact. Your calf muscles are sometimes called your body's second heart, because every contraction of those muscles squeezes the deep veins running through them, propelling blood upward. When you sit motionless for hours, that second heart simply stops beating. It does not matter how healthy your breakfast was that morning if your legs sit frozen in a chair for 6 or 8 hours afterward. If this realization struck you the way it struck us, share it with someone in your life who spends their days sitting, a parent, a spouse, a friend, because this single piece of knowledge could change the trajectory of their health. Now let us go deeper into the physiological reconstruction your body actually needs, because understanding the problem is only half the journey. Deep within each of your muscle cells lives a population of tiny, tireless engines called mitochondria, and they are the true unsung heroes of leg strength and vascular health. As we age, our mitochondria naturally decline in number and efficiency, which means every muscle contraction, every step, every climb up a set of stairs becomes more costly in oxygen and more taxing on an already strained circulatory system. Nutritional science departments studying aging, including work associated with Penn State's Department of Nutritional Sciences, have highlighted how certain nutrient-dense whole foods, rich in specific amino acids and antioxidants, can help support this mitochondrial machinery, essentially keeping more of those tiny engines online and firing efficiently. This is precisely where the ancestral wisdom of protein becomes essential, and specifically an amino acid called leucine, found richly in eggs, fish, and lean traditional cuts of meat. Leucine acts almost like a spark plug for muscle protein synthesis, signaling your body's cellular machinery to begin rebuilding tissue. Yet, previous generations ate protein at every single meal, spread throughout the day, precisely the pattern that research on anabolic resistance in older adults suggests is most effective, since the aging body needs a stronger, more concentrated protein signal at each meal to trigger the same rebuilding response it once achieved effortlessly in youth. Worse still, many modern diets front-load protein at dinner and neglect it at breakfast, leaving the body without that crucial morning spark for nearly the entire first half of the day. Do you know what that means for your knees, your hips, and the cartilage cushioning every joint in your legs? Cartilage itself depends on adequate circulation at its margins to receive nutrients, since cartilage has no direct blood supply of its own and must draw nourishment indirectly from surrounding tissue fluid. This is why traditional bone broths, simmered slowly for many hours, exactly as Depression-era households did out of necessity rather than trend, release collagen and connective tissue compounds that may support the raw materials your joints use for repair. It was never a luxury food. It was survival wisdom, born from households that could not afford to waste a single bone. And it happens to align remarkably well with what we now understand about joint nourishment. And now, let us speak of movement itself, because previous generations moved in ways we have almost entirely abandoned. The ancient Roman gladiators, whose training regimens have been reconstructed by historians studying preserved training manuals, relied heavily on barley, legumes, and consistent low-intensity movement between combat training. Precisely the kind of steady, rhythmic activity that keeps circulation flowing without overtaxing an aging cardiovascular system. Furthermore, 1950s physical culture protocols, long before modern gyms existed, emphasized simple, consistent daily walking and calisthenics over any single dramatic exercise, understanding instinctively what we now confirm in laboratories. Consistency, not intensity, is what protects circulation as we age. This is where it gets interesting, because walking itself, done correctly and consistently, has been studied extensively as an intervention for exactly the kind of peripheral artery narrowing we described earlier. Supervised walking programs, alternating periods of walking to the point of mild leg discomfort with brief rest, have been shown in vascular research to actually encourage the body to build tiny new collateral blood vessels around narrowed sections of artery, a kind of biological detour system. Your body, remarkably, retains this capacity for growing new pathways of circulation well into old age, if you simply give it the consistent signal to do so. Let us also speak plainly about the vascular highway itself, the arteries and veins that make up this entire network. Protecting them requires more than any single food. It requires reducing the low-grade inflammation that accelerates plaque buildup along artery walls. Traditional Mediterranean-style eating patterns, rich in olive oil, fatty fish, and colorful vegetables, and studied extensively by researchers, including groups connected to the USDA Human Nutrition Research Center, have consistently been associated with markers of healthier vascular function compared to diets heavy in processed, inflammatory foods. This is not a fad. It is simply what coastal and agricultural communities ate for centuries before industrial food processing arrived and changed everything. And so, as we bring together every thread of this journey, let us build for you a simple, honest, unhurried protocol. One you can begin tomorrow morning without spending a fortune or overhauling your entire life overnight. In the morning, before rising, perform your 60 seconds of ankle pumps to prime circulation for the day ahead. At breakfast, include a genuine source of protein, eggs, a bit of fish, even leftover meat from the night before, giving your muscles that crucial morning anabolic spark, rather than starting the day on toast and jam alone. Throughout the day, resist long, unbroken stretches of sitting. Simply rising and gently marching your knees for 30 seconds every hour keeps your second heart beating steadily. In the afternoon or evening, take a walk, even a short one. And if you notice cramping, slow down rather than stopping entirely, letting your body build those collateral pathways over time. At dinner, favor whole, traditional foods, olive oil, vegetables, and a modest portion of protein over heavily processed convenience meals. And in the evening, before bed, elevate your legs on a pillow for 10 to 15 minutes, giving gravity a rest and helping any pooled fluid return toward your heart overnight. Before we reveal our last and most important longevity truth, thank you for supporting our work with your likes. Your health is our mission, and it means more to us than you know that you've spent this time with us today. Now, for the final secret. The final truth is this: your legs have carried you through decades of life, through every job, every burden, every mile walked without a second thought. They have never once asked for gratitude, only attention. And an old physician's saying, passed down through generations of clinical practice, captures this better than any modern slogan ever could. A person is only as old as their legs, not their heart, not their mind, not the calendar on the wall, but the strength and the flow of life still moving through those two remarkable limbs that have never stopped serving you. Listen to them now, while their whispers are still gentle, and you may never have to hear them shout.